Today's Skidmark is about the way that the US has overplayed their hand and overestimated their importance in this world. Global Research published an article that absolutely sums the whole fiasco up. But the article highlights the reality that we're seeing the end of the US as a global superpower, which has turned into a global super bully, and actually in many instances a global super terrorist. Just look at the following realities. Where did America get the right to dictate to Venezuela to who they may sell their oil? They have now given them permission to sell some oil to Europe. Where does this arrogance come from? In what is it based? Then look at the other side. Where did they get the right to dictate to Africa that Africa may not buy grain from Russia? I cannot understand how did it happen that the US got into this position where they dictate everything to everybody. Humanity will owe Putin a lot. He has decided that this US global monopoly must be dismantled. The so-called collective West started the sanctions against Russia, and those sanctions backfired severely. Today, about 100 days after the start, we are witnessing an EU economy that is on the brink of total collapse. We're looking at an American economy that is struggling, but most important, the American debt load is out of control. Totally. I don't understand how America could sit and watch their leadership dump over $60 billion into Ukraine. It is absolutely astounding. The Global Research article, the heading says it all. The war in Ukraine marks the end of the American century. What is left is a steaming pile of dollar-denominated debt. With this sanction war against Russia, the so-called collective West clearly split the globe in two. On the one side, the collective West, which represents less than a quarter of the global population. And on the other side is the East, or the so-called third world. But in this third world, there are a few major players: Russia, China, India. That is three very strong countries. They are all three nuclear capable. All three of them have got strong industrial basis in their economy, and all three of them has got vast natural resources. The Americans overestimated their importance. They relied on their military might to bully and dominate and intimidate the world. But the Russian expedition into Ukraine has placed a serious question mark on the actual power of that military. The Americans has instigated a thing in the Ukraine that is going to be a major disaster for Europe. Terrorists are now in control of deadly weapons. But those questions were asked in the beginning and everybody just ignored it. And if we look now at what Janet Yellen is doing, they made a few mistakes. First of all, it was a very stupid move to steal the Russians' foreign currency. That was a stupid mistake. That destroyed the credibility of the dollar as a safe haven for countries to park their foreign assets. So, but that cannot be reversed. The damage has been done. Then this uncontrolled high volume of loans and donations that the US made to the Ukraine. How are they going to pay for it? What the economic war on Russia did was to show China, India, and Russia how low the West are willing to go. And they immediately took steps to protect themselves against that type of actions. And what that is doing now, it is dethroning the dollar as the global currency. The results of this, we will only see that in the months to come. But it's already clear that between Russia, China, and India, they are establishing monetary exchange mechanisms that excludes the dollar. They are doing their trading in their own currencies. And the globe is gonna shiver under what is going to happen when the dollar collapses. But it is something that cannot be reversed now. It's over, it's done. And I cannot understand that the American public allowed their leadership to do something like this. Yellen comes out with a stupid idea of forming a cartel in the oil buyers to limit Russia's oil price. Where the hell does she think she comes from? How can she even try to imagine to dictate to the world buyers how much they must pay Russia for its oil? Are they going to tell Russia, we're offering you $45 or $50 a barrel, take it or leave it? I'm quite sure Russia is going to say, leave it. Because the Americans, they are under the impression that whatever bird brain idea they get, they can impose on the world without resistance. 40, 50 years ago, yes, that was true, but not in 2022. We are seeing things changing. And I'm going to put a link to this article in the description of this video, but I'm going to read you a few more snips from it. The ferocity of the confrontation in the Ukraine shows that we are talking about much more than the fate of the regime in Kiev. The architecture of the entire world order is at stake. That is from Sergei Narashkin, Director of Russian Foreign Intelligence. Then this part. Here's your reserve currency thought for the day. Every US dollar is a check written on an account that is overdrawn by $30 trillion. It's true. The full faith and credit of the US Treasury is largely a myth held together by an institutional framework that rests on a foundation of pure sand. In fact, the USD is not worth the paper it's printed on. It is an IOU flailing in an ocean of red ink. The only thing keeping the US from vanishing into the ether is the trust of credulous people who continue to accept it as legal tender. If you think about what is said here, you have to laugh, because that is the truth. But why do people remain confident in the dollar when its flaws are known to all? After all, America's 30 trillion national debt is hardly a secret, nor is the additional 9 trillion that is piled up on the Fed's balance sheet. That is a stealth debt of which the American people are completely unaware, but they are responsible for it at the same time. I don't know. I think the American population allowed their leadership far too much leeway in driving their country and their economy. In order to answer that question, we need to look at how the system actually works and how the dollar is propped up by the numerous institutions that were created following World War II. These institutions provide an environment for conducting history's longest and most flagrant swindle: the exchange of high-ticket manufactured goods, raw materials and hard labor for slips of green paper with dead presidents on it. That is a loaded statement, but it's the truth. One can only marvel at the genius of the elites who concocted this scam and then imposed it wholesale on the masses without a peep of protest. Of course, the system is accompanied by various enforcement mechanisms that swiftly remove anyone who tries to either break free from the dollar or, God help us, create an alternative system altogether. Think about Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi. But the fact is, aside from the institutional framework and the ruthless extermination of dollar opponents, there is no reason why humanity should remain yoked to a currency that is buried beneath a mountain of debt and whose real value is virtually unknowable. Yeah, that is a powerful statement. And it may shock people to listen it and to read it. But bring your arguments to contradict what this guy says here. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when the dollar was the strongest currency in the world and deserved its spot at the top of the heap. Following World War I, the US was the owner of the majority of the world's gold, which was why an international delegation decided that the world's currencies would no longer be linked to gold, but could be pegged to the US dollar, because the greenback was itself linked to gold. This is a lot of things for a man to absorb, but you must look at it, and think about it. The days of the US dollar is counted. Now just take note. Putin has thrown the cabal of the central banks, the Rothschilds and so, out of Russia. The Russian central bank does not belong to outsiders. Remember that. This thing is crazy and scary what Biden managed to do. And the Ukraine was the pivot. I cannot understand. At stages I'm thinking that maybe Zelensky is an agent for somebody that we are not so sure who it is. Because what did he do? He managed to drain the West of billions of dollars. And he managed to disarm the West because they all threw their weapons into Ukraine without thinking that Russia may win. Who is Zelensky actually serving? Think about it. I'm not going to read more from this article. I will have the link in the description of the video. You can go and read it yourself. The reality is, just as the EU has committed economical suicide with the sanctions, America has overplayed his hand in its role in these sanctions, and it has exposed the dollar for what it is. And the world is turning away from the dollar. You must look at what's happening in reality. Many countries are beginning to trade with one another with their own currencies. And the effect on the dollar is not very visible at this point in time. As one commentator said, the orders were placed started coming into Russia in April and May. Some deliveries in May, most deliveries will be in June, and most of the payments will be at the end of June. And that is outside the dollar. So we can expect a dramatic reduction in the dollar value in the next 2-3 months. Well, that is predictions. Will it be true? I don't know. But if after reading this article, it became clear that Biden has managed to toast and burn the dollar.